Welcome to Energy Stew. This is Peter Roth, your host. And I'd like to ask you, how graceful is your life? Are you experiencing grace? Isn't grace wonderful? Maybe we could use some more of it. So to help us explore grace and appreciate its opportunities is a wonderful friend, a woman who's been on Energy Stew a number of times. And I always love talking with her. She has so much to offer us. Marion Mace, welcome back to Energy Stew.
Oh, thank you, Peter. I love our conversations pre and during, and I'm very graceful that you, very grateful that you invited me back. So thank you so much.
Well, I remember learning about you many years ago, that you were a teacher of the Grabovoi number method. And I was so excited about that. And that's how we first met. And you still are very excited about that yourself. And uh, and what I want to look at with you is the opportunity to live more in grace, to feel that life is more graceful. And
And
yeah,
yeah, and it can feel very difficult when you're very involved with hearing what comes in via all sorts of different sources, including the media, about what's happening in the outer world. And so when you're looking at all the drama and trauma and everything else, it's very easy to slip out of grace when your mind gets locked into the negativity and what's being sent to you as their version of truth. And so having, been on a journey like all of us have been, you have moments of stepping into grace and surrendering and trusting the process. And then there are moments where you step out of it and you get locked into the outer narrative and thinking, I don't know what's true. And of
well,
course,
what's true for each of us differently, because we're all here with different purposes and different personalities. And there are a lot of people who are here to fight the fight. And to them, it feels right that they have no choice but to climb in and proclaim whatever they need to proclaim in this world and fight for it. And and others of us are not as designed for that. Even though I was a warrior when I was young, as a karate black belt, and fought off muggers on the street and all of that, I I did my service to save the world from bad guys, at least physically. And so I I no longer want to be that warrior. I no longer want to fight the fight so much as I want to light the light.
mm, I think it's always good, just, similar things where you've had to step into your um, total power and have and call on that warrior within you. I mean, anybody that's still here after 5 years has in them the warrior that they can step into and really call on their strength. And it's not even something that you consciously step into. It activates within you. I mean, if you, as I said, look at the last 5 years, there's certain people that didn't follow the narrative. Why was that? Because something inside of them, the truth, was saying, no, this is not true. And I'm calling on everything within me and being the warrior and saying, no, I'm going to be different to everyone else because of the feeling I have inside. And this to me is also surrendering to what the real truth within you and
Right.
and following that, which sometimes is hard.
And you and I have talked about the source cards and human design, and and we know about astrology and all these different ways that we're designed differently from each other, and therefore we can't judge anybody else uh, about how they're living their cards and designs, etc. because that's that natural instinct that you're talking about.
Yes. Yes. And, if we talk about we're all different and we all have a different purpose and a different journey, but I love the synchronicity in all of that madness of being in our own journeys because Peter, you're in the other side of the world to me. I'm here in Australia, in Melbourne. Yet somehow the quantum field connected us. That invisible field that's always working and putting us in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people to help to synchronize our journey so that we're more on path instead of wandering off and on another path that takes us on another learning experience. And so that to me then is living in grace, is living in that point of wonder. I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder who's going to show up as a point of curiosity instead of like trying to control it. Because
Yeah,
I've
surrender.
tried, yeah, I've tried that. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of pressure in the head.
Right.
And it's not a nice way to live.
But there's something about trusting the process, and it's an old um, Zen way of being called Wu Wei, which is just taking care of what's in front of you and letting uh, life deliver through serendipity and synchronicity, and trusting that. And it's hard. It's hard to get out of our own way because we do want to control it. And we think we are in control. And yet we don't even think for ourselves. We've never created a thought. We've only had thoughts. Thoughts come through us naturally, according to our design, according to what our soul is here for. It could be our soul is thinking for us rather than our mind or ego, or it could be God thinking for us, or who knows? We don't know where our thoughts come from, but we all have them, and we think we are creating them, and yet they do run according to our designs, according to who we're here to be. So the more that we can hold that in perspective, the more that we can surrender to the natural unfolding of ourselves as well as life around us.
Yeah, and I agree. And there is also looking at our point of reference. And if you go back to, for instance, some of Greg Grabovoi's foundational teachings, not just math, is to understand the relationship between the creator, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, and who we are in relation to that as soul. We're an aspect of the creator. So,
Right.
for instance, if I had a pizza and I took away a slice of pizza, would it still be a pizza? Of course. So if you look at that in the concept of us being an aspect of the creator, are we all of the creator? Are we all part of God? No, we're an aspect of that as soul. And we are soul. We have a spirit that takes the thoughts from soul and transports it into our consciousness. Where is our consciousness? It's not in our head. It's actually within 3 meters around us is the sphere of our consciousness. Our consciousness then interacts with our soul back and forth. And it's then via our spirit into our consciousness that we then need a human being. We need a body because we don't develop unless we have a physical body on this earth plane. So this is why it's important to look after the body and read the messages it gives us, especially when we're in a process of regeneration, or we're in a moment where we're out of alignment with our body, or our body's giving us some pain. It's like, right in this moment, because that's all I can change. What's the message? Not just physical pain, but what may be underlying that, and not see ourselves as separate, because soul is still communicating, because you are soul and you have a human, a bit like I'm a human and I have a dog. But the point of reference for most people is their body. and soul is something separate to you. And that's no, you are soul, you have a body, and your spirit, which is energy free of time and space, is like what you would call working with the ether. And ether was, in the old terms, that was part of alchemy, and it was called quintessence.
Right.
And you used to work with the ether to bring form into the physical. So I think all of those aspects of us then give way to us being very present in this current moment. And that's what we can alter and be the observer of. And it's
Right.
important to learn to observe.
Right. And I think the more that we awaken to our soul, because as you say, the soul is us, but it's also bigger than our mind, because our minds are limited to a fraction of everything our soul can see and know. It's called even our subconscious is so aware of thousands of things every second, but our mind can't be. So it
No,
feeds our mind with what it can handle.
our mind only processes at 24 bits,
Yeah,
pulses
right.
per second. And the soul pulses at 17 to the minus 10 pulses. So that's 17 with 10 zeros afterwards.
Right.
Very quick, because it sees the whole picture. Our mind only sees what's in front of us
Right.
based on what our optical system is
Right.
showing
And
us.
that's
Whereas,
Wu Wei, right?
yeah, and soul is like, oh, it can see the bigger picture. Okay, well, we need to connect you with Peter, and just all those synchronistic things that happens. So to try to sort it out in your head, give your head a rest, really, your left brain, it's only there to add up and tell you how to get from A to B.
Right. So let's come back to the idea of grace, which means aligning with that greater knowledge of our soul, of our subconscious. And even that is connected to our oversoul, our higher self, which is even more perspicacious. And so it's powerful. We live in this powerful reality of ourselves that we need to flow better with. Go with the flow, and yeah,
And it's easy to say as a concept when you've experienced it. And I feel like, for instance, my husband and I can speak to this because back in 2020, he left his very handsomely paid business with a business partner that was a bit of a narcissist. So we walked away right at the start of COVID. And there was a whole lot of times during that experience where our toes were hanging off the end of the cliff and we're going, so I wonder how we're going to pay the mortgage. And I just had to think about my life and where I got to right in this moment. Have I always been supported? Have there's all been enough and more? And if it has been like that in the past, it will be in the present and in the future. All I need to understand is I need to step out of the fear. And so I developed a little tool of checking in. I'd have a look at what I call my money flow channel, my resource channel. And to me, it looked like a pipe. And there was $1 coin dropped down. I thought, hang on, if I'm a spiritual being and everything's abundant, it shouldn't have a dollar coin drop down. It should be flowing in the spiritual world. And so to me, I was like, okay, there's a block. I don't have to understand what my block is. I just have to remove the block. So I took a sphere of E equals VS, which is the formula for the transformation of the energy of life. And I imagined throwing it up this funnel. And very shortly, I noticed all the more than enough resources were flowing and landing dollar coins and things like that. So when I start to experience in the outer world that things were chugging along and we'd get to a stop, I'd go back in and have a look again and clear it. And then I'd step out of my way, get into that point of surrender, and always something would turn up. It didn't mean that I just rested on my laurels and crossed my legs and wished for a happy ending. Then I started to work with the systems, remembering that I can shift and change them. I can instead of the first thing to be to pay the bills, I can orchestrate and manipulate them in a way so that they work for me and not the other way around.
Right.
So I tell them, this is what I'm going to pay you. And
That's cool. Yeah.
instead of them being fit, because they're all in now a point of having to accept people going through experience. I know from my own research, all our utilities have already been paid for. So I have no upset about holding back so they get another double dip of all our resources. But it requires you to really be on that point of surrender, knowing that always you're looked after.
Over so many years of counseling people, decades, thousands of people, so many times people were at the end of their rope. They were painted into a corner, they had no idea what they were going to do. And sure enough, things happen and they get through it. Not easily necessarily, but they're on to the next thing and the next thing. And sometimes, 10 years later or 15 years later, I'll talk to these people and they're just amazed at how they've gotten by, but they did.
And sometimes, part of that journey also has a personal lesson in there. So, for instance, if you're very good at giving to people all the time, you just share from your heart, but you're not very good at receiving. Sometimes your soul puts you in a place where you're humble enough to either ask for some help or be in a point of being able to receive. So, in fact, that point of not being able to be resourceful actually has a lesson in you as you have to surrender and allow yourself to receive, because the universe cannot abide somebody who just gives all the time.
Well, what's interesting is that human design has 6 different kinds of flow of finance, and so it's based on your birth data. And some people have investment, some people just have accumulation, some people just have a life of solid finance. And I learned that mine is charity, that I give. And I've noticed that I'm always trying to save people from paying me too much when I have sessions with people, and I always feel for them if they've had to save their pennies to see me, and et cetera. And I try to be as generous as possible, and often give my services away. But I do it, just because there are some people who deserve it. And then I said, as soon as I found out that I'm supposed to be generous and give and donate, I said, well, wait a minute. What do I get? And I said, I don't understand this. Everybody, the other numbers that people have in their human designs, they have, even my wife has steering money. She's here to steer money. And it's kind of the same thing with me, is that neither of us are here to accumulate a lot of money, but we know what we want to do with it. And so I trusted that we wouldn't have these. We wouldn't be able to steer money or be generous if we weren't taken care of. You can't be generous if you don't have anything to be generous with.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing, just to go back to not from your perspective, but just generally, when you give too much, the universe actually sends a notification that you start to feel resentful. Resentful is the quantum field telling you there hasn't been an equal exchange.
Right.
And
it needs to be honorable. Right.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be money. It can be just receiving.
Sure.
And it can be
Service.
receiving the thanks, whatever. But we've put money on it, but doesn't necessarily need to be from that point. But to understand there is you know, you can't, if you haven't got resources, when you have resources, you have a choice on how you look after that. And if you go back, money's just energy. How am I going to use this energy in a way that benefits all? And one of the things that in Grabovoi's teaching has a book called Numbers for Successful Business, and we're all in business. If we've worked for somebody, if we're part of the economic system, if our boss is not doing well, then that just flows downhill. And so he says, when you are creating, you need to create as almost like a legacy, and not a legacy of pot of gold, but a legacy about how you use this energy. And it must be always developing, because we don't, everything is always changing. The law of compensation energy cannot be destroyed. It only changes form. So how do I take this form and turn it into something that's more quintessent, more alchemic?
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're responsible for. How to use it in a way
Be,
that's going to be eternally developing for everyone.
right. Become Merlin.
Yeah.
I love that. And so we have to, that's what grace is. Grace is believing in ourselves to be magical. And not to understand how to be magical, because you can't force it, you can't control it, you can't control life. Again, then you come back to force versus power. The power
Yes.
is the grace.
Yes. Yeah. And you don't want to be in force, and you don't want to be trying to work it out.
Right.
That
Right.
yeah, that magic is in. If you even took the external look out of it and went back in, you don't have to tell your body how to regenerate itself. You don't have to tell the blood how to flow. You don't need to tell how the body how to process food. It does that automatically. We already are working with magic. The body is a good example of the
Yeah,
alchemic
magic at work.
magic at work. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
And so if you get into that, my favorite line is stepping into a point of wonder like a child. And you step into that alchemic wonder, grace field, and then you're beautifully surprised sometimes what turns up.
but I think there's great purpose to do that. I mean, we really need to think each day of our innocence and of life delivering magically to us, because we are magical and life is. Uh, and but again, it comes back to effort or not, and the idea is not. and and allow versus effort, and yet have intention. Intention is great, but without effort.
Yeah, you've got to be, well, if you go back to how our world was created, if you step into the first few days, it says, let there be light. The creator wasn't going, oh, let me see if I can conjure something up. You have to have clear intentions, like a direction into the quantum field. And the point is being very aware of, all of us have our field around us that we create. It's a 5 meter sphere around us. And sometimes when we go into the outer world, we pick up information from other people. And being able to know what it's like when you're calm and centered and in that state of grace, compared to when you have picked up information and now it's impacting the way you think and feel. And one of the beautiful places to really step into grace is in nature. The
Right.
trees aren't arguing with each other. And if you sit and watch, for instance, the trees' movement or the birds interacting with nature, it's very easy then to step into grace, because in that moment you're just observing the energy
I,
of creation.
Not long ago, I interviewed an author of a book called "Why Can't We Be More Like Trees?"
I love it.
So, right, and so it's wonderful talking with you, and always inspiring. How can people follow up with you?
Yes, I've got a website. It's E equals VS, but the equals is spelt in new numerals. So it's E equals vs.com.au.
So it's all spelled out. The
All spelled
equals is not a sign. It's just
out. No,
it's the
it's
word
left
equal.
equals. Yeah. Yeah.
Equals, yes. And so yeah, I always love the posts that you make on you know in media, and and we'll talk again soon because we never really got into the power of Grabovoi uh, recently, anyway, and we alluded to it, but Grabovoi is a great aid to us to help manifest from. Um,
Yes. To
so
understand how reality is created and how we interact with that field.
right, so people can look that up, and finding Grabovoi numbers is really important because there are numbers for everything. I just today found the number for my shoulder joint, which needs help. So Grabovoi has a number for that I can use to help restore my shoulder joint. So
Yes,
that's how diverse his numbers are.
absolutely.
So it's so wonderful again to catch up with you and talk about just flow with you. I think grace was at work just for us to have this conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm very grateful again for us to have our meeting many years ago and to
Yeah,
always continue the flow of our conversations. So thank you, Peter.
no, my pleasure. And so this is Peter Roth, your host of Energy Stew at prn.live. I can be reached at Peter at Heart River, HEART river.org. I'd love to hear from you, and thanks so much for listening.